The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
Welcome to Puny Pod, your guide through these vast new realities. Follow us and ponder the question, what if? Welcome to Puny Pod, everyone, the Marvel fandom podcast where we rewatch the MCU in release order, and we cover Marvel news over on our monthly Bugle episodes. I'm Ryan, and my co-host, who just can't help himself with the dad jokes, is David. David, how are we doing this morning?
I thought you were going to say, what if my co-host partner drank very little caffeine and recorded an episode? And that would be me. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Not too shabby. It's wild to me that we're already at what if. I think all of Phase 4, I've just been constantly surprised with how far along we are. But yeah, I am excited to talk about this. We got to meet in person. This is the first episode we're recording for our free feed since we got to hang out in person.
That's right.
So yeah, it was cool to get to see you, hang out in the park a little bit, record some stuff.
For people who were not there, it was the most coolest unnerdy thing you can ever imagine. But go check out Instagram if you don't believe me.
Yeah, yeah. We did make a meme. We did a meme. We did one singular meme. You're welcome, everybody. But yeah, it was a good time, man. And I captured a lot of content that I'm posting over on my personal Instagram as well. I was there kind of as work for concierge stuff. So got to kind of experience a lot of things with the park and kind of scope out some things that this was the first trip I'd done since getting hired as a concierge, so it was kind of cool to get to go out there and then as a additional bonus got to meet David and his wife, so it was pretty cool.
Was it just out of curiosity, was it different for you going as a concierge for work as opposed to just like, hey, I'm just gonna go here with like family, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think part of it, like, one thing I discovered, and this is gonna sound so first world problem-y and whatever, but here we are. One thing I discovered was like, because one of my main goals was to go capture a lot of content. As I have gotten into this job and as I've started to be more active on my social media, I've discovered that I personally just had a lack of like usable content, and a lack of just like B-roll, simply just 6 seconds of video of people walking down Main Street, or like a quick panning shot of Avengers Campus, or those sort of things that I just simply did not have, because I had never viewed the parks in that way. And I discovered that it takes a lot of work to get all that done. I know, David, you experienced some of this where like I was running around like crazy and I kept like touching base with you guys, but throughout the afternoon I had to go do other things and get other shots, and it was nuts. I spent 2 full-ish days in the park plus another morning after that. And I definitely rode some rides, but it wasn't. I did not ride every ride, and I was not crushing rides by any means. And yeah, I just had to kind of bounce around and get these videos here and there, and it was really interesting. It was really eye opening when influencers talk about how much work it is in the parks when they need to shoot a video, and sometimes they just need to take personal um, trips that aren't on video, and I've always kind of scoffed at that personally, but then having done it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's all very legit. It all makes a lot of sense.
Ryan is empathizing with the fresh baked guy.
Yeah, exactly. Who we saw David from Fresh Baked in the parks. He was reporting on the Avengers e-ticket, I think.
Yeah. So. Yeah. You kind of feel sorry for him because like every 50 feet, somebody's like, "Hey, David." And then I wave back and then they're like, "Not you." And I'm like,
womp womp.
Womp womp.
Yeah, we're not quite to the Eric Johnson level where people know us just for our voices. So,
oh God, I hope no one knows me for my voice. Not that I don't want people to listen, but just I hate the sound of my own voice. But anyway.
Well, if you guys, by the way, I did mention there, kind of briefly, I am a travel planner for Concierge, so I'll just get this plug out of the way up at the top here. If you do want to go to Disney parks or Universal parks, where I actually, over on our main show, Ears Up, I just did a history of Marvel in theme parks, and a lot of that has to do with Universal. So if you want to go experience the Marvel stuff at Universal, or you just want to travel, period, reach out. You can find me on Instagram, Tomorrowland Travel Authority. You can reach out to the show. Our show email is Puny Pod at earsup-podcast.com. You can also reach out to me. That's Ryan H R Hardon, RHARDON at conciears. That's ears with an S.com. Or you can just hop on concierge.com and fill out the request a quote form. So yeah, jump on, and if you're looking to travel at all, let us know. We specialize in theme park travel, especially Disney, but we can do literally anything. Like I've mentioned previously on the show, I've got my folks headed to the Caribbean later this year and helping them out. And yeah, it's a great service. You're paying nothing more than what you would pay booking yourself. You just get the gift of my time for all that. So hit us up. But without any further ado, David, let's get into the rewatch we did here. So we rewatched What If Season 1, which at the time I don't think we knew was going to be Season 1. But yeah, we watched What If Season 1, and David, I think there's some interesting production details. So why don't you give us some here?
What If Season 1 show made its debut on Disney Plus on August 11, 2021. So about 2 months after Loki's first season, airing 9 episodes. It was supposed to be 10, but because of production delays caused by the pandemic, the 10th episode of the first season wasn't completed in time. And so it was moved to the second season. And we'll talk to it when we get to the last episode of this series. So it was the most in-demand new series that debuted in the US from July 1 to September 30, 2021. Held the title of Disney Plus's biggest animated series premiere until 2024, when Dream Producers and Inside Out came out. And it was the 6th most watched pirated TV series of 2021. Number 1 was WandaVision. It is Phase 4, Installment 5, the 28th installment of the MCU. The actual runtime of the entire show, without recaps, logos, or end credits, is a tidy 4 hours and 9 minutes. There were 9 episodes, and they were released weekly. Financials, it was estimated there was about $110 million to produce, so about $12 million per episode, which is less than half than, say, Loki's $25 million budget. Reviews: Rotten Tomatoes, critics 89%, audience 91%. Very well received. I think it goes without saying we both enjoyed the series, but not everyone loved it. 1-star review from IMDb from Adam332. Quote, what if Marvel had not made this garbage, but instead took it serious and produced something that resembled the comics? End quote.
Oh man, just wait till we get into my comic details, Adam. That's actually, you know what? I bet that's Adam Driver. I bet that's Adam Driver's IMDb account and he's just salty because this overrode his 2013 romantic comedy film with Daniel Radcliffe called What If as well. By the way, really good rom-com. But
Okay.
Anyway, not to sidetrack us.
Add it to the list. By September 2018, Marvel Studios was developing several series for its Disney Plus streaming service, and one of those was this animated series based on the Marvel comic run, which you'll talk about. What If? The creative head writer, EP, showrunner AC Bradley, who did Tales of Arcadia, Ms. Marvel, she joined in October 2018 after Marvel was impressed with her pitch. But what's funny is when she was pitching her idea, she basically spoiled Endgame and Thor Love and Thunder. Quote, my first week, I wanted to do Jane Foster Thor, and I was told no. And I went into this whole feminist rant of why characters are important, why they're necessary, why women need to be able to wield the hammer. And they were like, yeah, we're going to do it in live action. And she also pitched the idea of Old Man Steve and Professor Hulk. And this is before they let her see Endgame. So she described the series balance as between character examination and action, like Die Hard meets Wes Anderson, which I thought was kind of an interesting description.
Yeah.
The director was Brian Andrews. He was the storyboard artist for most of Phase 2 and Phase 3. So Avengers movies, Doctor Strange, Dark World, Guardians 1 and 2, Ant-Man. He is the showrunner director for Marvel Zombies, which would be coming out, I think, in a couple weeks, right? I think 28th. Anyway, so the writers examined all the MCU heroes to determine what makes them tick, so they could use different scenarios to explore the hero behind the shield. And so, there were 30 potential episodes which were conceived and written by AC Bradley and Brian Andrews and Brad Winterbaum and others, and they were pitched to Feige, who narrowed them down to 10 for the first season. So, the cast. Jeffrey Wright is appearing new as the Watcher, and then you have more than 50 actors reprising their roles, and they're just so many of them. We'll get to them in each role, but a lot of voices are familiar. However, there were in July 2021, Variety reported that several characters, such as Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Carol Danvers, would be voiced by different actors than those who had portrayed them in the films, and said Winterbaum said that it was the exploration of the universe gave a cerebral justification for the different actors. Others said it was to be cheap and save some money. Ultimately, a lot of this stuff is timing, because when you have 50 plus actors, it's going to be impossible almost to get them all, and especially when some of the stuff, when you look at kind of the timing, the theaters were booming, folks are just really busy. So new voices, we have Mick Wingert as Iron Man Tony Stark. He voices Stark in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Lake Bell is Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, and she voiced Vanessa Fisk in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Hudson Thames plays Peter Parker, Spider-Man. He also voices Peter Parker in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Josh Keaton as Steve Rogers. He's voiced Peter Parker in Spectacular Spider-Man and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And then Ross Marquand, who did Johann Schmidt / the Red Skull in Ultron. He does Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame, and the Ultron Sentries in Multiverse of Madness. The last one I mentioned is Fred Tatasciore as Drax. He does Corvus Glaive. He does Volstagg. Dave Bautista is a little salty because he said he wasn't asked to be in the series. That could have been some of the fallout from him defending what's his name, who got fired after the tweets. Oh gosh.
What's her name? Yeah.
No. The director, creator.
Sean Gunn.
Yeah. So
other Gunn, James Gunn.
God, it's like we haven't seen these movies 100 times. Anyway, the animation. Just want to mention the animation because this is our first animated series we'll see. I really like the animation quite a bit. This style, Stephen Frank serves as head of animation on the series, and it was presented as what's called cell shaded 3D CG animation and 2D hand draw effects. And so the cell shaded animation style is they use likenesses based on the characters, and it's a type of like non photorealistic rendering designed to make 3D computer graphics appear to be flat by using less shading color. And then it's the cell shaders used to mimic the style of a comic book or a cartoon to give the render like a paper-like texture, if you will, which on rewatch is like, it felt like a moving comic book. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of comic books, let's talk about all 64 characters, origin story, 10 minutes each. Let's go.
Let's go. Before I get into the comic books, do you know? So Fred T, who voiced Volstagg, Drax, Corvus Glaive, etc. on this. Do you know? So he's done a ton of voice work. A lot in like American Dad and stuff like that. But do you know what one of his movie roles was?
No.
He voiced Sam Jackson in Team America World Police.
Oh my God.
Which is just fantastic, like full circle moment there for a second. But
yeah, and if you look at Fred T, Tatasciore, I will mispronounce it that way, does not look like Samuel Jackson. I'll just leave it at that.
No.
Not at all.
No.
That's
and these
funny.
are, I will say, he's like a heavyweight in the voice acting, and I do think, just something like personal little aside here. So I know a lot of people who are very into like animation and anime and that sort of stuff. I dabble in it, and I do know that like voice actors are very frustrated right now because film actors are taking a lot of their roles. So it was cool that, you know, they did get some people, and these are pretty big voice actors that are kind of popular in the industry that did sub in for some of these groups, or for some of these characters that they couldn't get the original actors for, whether it's because they were suing Marvel at the time or something else.
Yeah, it is interesting to note that more and more these days, I hadn't really thought about it to mention it, but it is true. Like, you go to see an animated film and it's just a bunch of big stars, and you're like, do you really need, I don't know, this person to have voiced this small role? That could have easily gone to a voice actor who probably would have done a much better job. But yeah.
All right, so looking at the comics, I'm going to do this a little bit differently than I have in the past. I have one character that I'll talk about, and then I actually want to talk a little bit about the history of the actual title What If, because ultimately that's what this series used. It didn't use a lot of characters from the What If series, or even this one in particular didn't use a lot of storylines that were proposed in various What If comics. This more took some what ifs off of the movies, which is fun and totally in the spirit. But it left me with a little bit of an awkward pause where it was like, okay, cool. How do I make the comic history here? So I will talk real quick about Uatu. So Uatu the Watcher, which he was not named Uatu yet in this series, but as What If goes on, he will get the name Uatu. He was introduced Fantastic Four number 13, January 1963. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby joint. Uatu is one of the Watchers, a highly advanced race of cosmic beings who have vowed to only watch and never interfere. Although Uatu is rather infamous among the Watchers for breaching this vow many times. Primarily, he watches over Earth 616, as each Watcher is given a sector of space to observe. This Watcher, Uatu, created a citadel in the blue area of the moon, which we actually saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where he's talking to Stan Lee. However, Uatu often does he can and does watch other parts of the cosmos, following the lives of heroes and villains alike, to observe the events of cosmic importance. In addition, he has portals into other realities to ponder what if. Due to his love for Earth, he sometimes helps its heroes. Commonly, the Fantastic Four against notable threats such as Molecule Man, Galactus, the Overmind, the Beyonder, the Immortus Wave, the Rogue Watcher, the Reckoning, and more. In the aftermath of the Reckoning War, most of the Watchers lost their cosmic sight, but Uatu absorbed the knowledge of the apex of all reality and became the one and only Watcher, at least on Earth 616. So, he is currently in the comics the Watcher, the singular Watcher. So that's Uatu. There he has a long comic book history, but I tried to, boil it down here. Now looking at What If as a comic book series and seeing, how it went, right? So first run of What If was February 1977 until October of 1984. During its first run, What If was a monthly ongoing series that released a total of 74 issues. Through the first series, Uatu was the narrator of the series, much like what we see in this cartoon. Every month there was a new issue. The A story was almost always some form of what if, and then something changed, right? What if, for example, a couple of them that were in the first series were what if the Hulk had Bruce Banner's brain, Smart Hulk? What if Jane Foster had found Mjolnir, Lady Thor, right?
We'll never see those ever happen.
And these A stories were all told in self-contained stories. The beginning, middle, and end was all in this one issue. Some issues also included B and C stories, and in one case, issue 34, 73 additional stories beyond the A story. That was a all humor, all jokes issue, so that one's like one-page joke stories, kind of.
That's fun.
Yeah, and the tone of What If has always kind of melded humor with some serious, so it's not quite as self-parodying as another series I'll talk about in a second, but there is a level of humor. Like some of the what ifs that are presented are like, what if a spider was bitten by a radioactive human, or what if it was the Fantastic Five instead of the Fantastic Four? Some of those that like, they don't always have to be these really serious, hard hitting what ifs, or sometimes it is a little bit sillier. Most of the auxiliary stories, so the B and C stories, kind of followed the same method as the A stories, where it was like presented as a what if this thing changed, and it was just a different investigation. Although, in a pretty notable deviation from this, issues 23 through 30 have an auxiliary story that actually impacted the core comics universe. It took place in Earth 616 and told the history of the Eternals. So that was actually an arc across several What If comics, and it told early history of the Eternals, which was really interesting. I actually didn't know that going into this research, that there was that they used it in that way. So really interesting piece there. So it was canceled October 1984, and then it was revived in July of 1989. And volume 2 ran from July of 1989 to November of 1998. During this second run, What If was again a monthly ongoing series. This time it released 117 issues. The second volume differed from the first volume in a few ways. It started very, very similarly, right? The self-contained alternate universe stories narrated by Uatu. They knew this worked and they started this way. But as it kept going and as the comics around it changed, they also made some adjustments. So one of the most noticeable things was stories could stretch beyond the limitation of starting and finishing within one issue. So they could have arcs, right? So they could do longer explorations, or in some cases they actually even did alternates to the alternates. So they did like some stories that would have like three different endings. Like if this had gone differently, even though we posed this what if question, this other event that happens near the end, it might change and then spark off these other ideas. Really cool to let the writers and artists explore these thoughts, and you know, this kind of became a playground for that kind of thing. Um, in the mainline comics over in Fantastic Four, there was a story kind of in the middle of this run where Uatu was actually stripped of his status as a Watcher because he killed another Watcher, and he was stripped of his status as a Watcher, and so that kind of left What If in a little bit of a lurch, right? Because it wouldn't make sense for Uatu to continue to be the narrator of What If he didn't have his cosmic sight. So he did eventually phase out as the narrator, and in issue 76 of What If Volume 2, Uatu was fully phased out as the narrator. He was not the narrator. He would come back occasionally as a narrator, like in future volumes, but he was not the focus changed. So by phasing him out, and they actually stopped using narrators for the rest of volume 2, um they focused on the story, right? And so the story of the What If could become the focus rather than the narrator, which was a really interesting change. And then starting with issue 87 of volume 2, they changed up the kind of way that the title was formatted. So it went from kind of What If, and then it told you what changed, to What If starring, and then it would have a character or a team, and then it would be a title. So something like uh The Fantastic Foibles or something like that, right?
Right.
So rather than kind of giving you the story up at the top, they changed it up so that it was a little bit more mysterious what would happen.
That's cool.
After volume 2, What If became more of kind of a one-off mini-series type of title. Technically speaking, there have been, I think, about 15 volumes of this series, but sometimes those volumes are like one issue here, 3 issues there, that sort of thing. As of most recently, What If titles have investigated things like what if Venom had become bonded to other characters like She-Hulk, Wolverine, Doctor Strange, Loki, or Moon Knight? And what if Galactus was heralded by other characters other than the Silver Surfers we know, like Hulk or Gambit or Moon Knight or Rogue or Ghost Spider? And then in 2024, Marvel announced that What If would expand. So not only would it include alternate explorations of the Marvel universe, but they expanded it to other properties within the Walt Disney Company. So the first one under this new kind of idea was a What If based around the Alien franchise. And that is still actually releasing today, I believe. So you can go read that on Marvel Unlimited, or I think there's a couple of like trade paperbacks released of that, so you can go check that out. And then one that I know we've talked about on the Monthly Bugle a few times, there is a series of Marvel and Disney What Ifs based on classic Disney characters. So you have, what if Donald Duck became Wolverine? Old Duck Donald? What if Donald Duck became Thor? What if Minnie became Captain Marvel? What if Mickey and Friends became the Fantastic Four? What if Mickey and Friends became the Avengers? What if Donald Duck became Iron Man? And what if Goofy became Spider-Man? These were all released between July 2024 and actually July of this year, 2025.
I think we need a Disney shareholder revolt right now. This is we need to overthrow the board of directors. This is outlandish.
They are pretty silly, and like some of the I have read through a couple of them, and they're very, very silly, and it's I think they're a little bit self-aware in the way that I read it, is where like the Marvel artists kind of know this is a joke. But
yeah, totally.
so there are a few notable spin-offs from the What If comics, and so I want to talk a little bit about those. One of the most notable is the MC2 universe. So Marvel Comics 2. This was an imprint from Marvel Comics, whose comic books depict an alternate future timeline for the Marvel universe. This imprint was spun off from the events of What If number 105. That's volume 2, number 105, February of 1998, which was the first appearance of the character Spider-Girl, Spider-Man's daughter from an alternative future. This Earth has been designated Earth 982. This universe was spun off in an attempt to make Marvel Comics more accessible to new readers, very similar to what they've done with like they attempted to do with the Ultimate Universe in the early 2000s. Essentially the idea here is let's make a universe where you don't need to know decades of back history to catch up on. Instead, you can just pick up these comic books fresh as a brand new reader and, you know, be kind of on equal footing with everybody. The MC2 was not hugely popular. There are definitely fans out there of it. I know that like it kind of I think it lasted for a total of like 5 or 6 years. And it had, I want to say, 5 different titles in within the imprint. From this universe, though, we did get a couple of notable characters, namely that are important to the MCU here. Hope Pym, aka the Red Queen. In this universe, she is a villain who feels the Avengers are a disgrace to the memory of her father, Hank Pym, which served as a character inspiration for Hope Van Dyne. Basically, my understanding is the filmmakers kind of saw Hope Pym and said, well, what if she didn't kind of give in to her hate, right? What if she kind of managed that hate in a different way? And that gave us Hope Van Dyne, aka our Wasp. And then, not important to the MCU, but important to comics in general, is Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl. Mayday was the inspiration for starting the MC2, like I mentioned, and she became a core character of the MC2 and has actually made the jump over to Earth 616 and is a recurring character in mainline comics now. So Mayday, Spider-Girl is definitely a big part of Spider-Verse comics at this point. And then the other one that I want to mention is What the, which is a series of comics, not What If, but What the. So What the is a Marvel Comics comic book series that kind of does self-parodying work. It self-parodies the Marvel universe as well as characters from the DC Comics universe. It's very Mad Magazine-y when you kind of look through it. It's similar to a very early series, very early concept of this in the 60s called Not Brand Esh.
I remember that.
what the was billed as the Marvel mag of mirth and mayhem. The series ran for 26 issues from August of 88 to the winter of 93, with issue number 26 being a fall special. It typically contained short stories with comedic takes on heroes and villains, such as Spider-Ham, being a substitute for Spider-Man, and it really gave the artists and writers a space to play and kind of make fun of themselves. And like, there's some where I think there's one of the series where I forget who the artist is now, but he had written for Superman. He had been working with DC and written for Superman, and he had come over to Marvel and also done some Marvel stuff. And he wrote this story where Superman was reading his Marvel work and kind of making fun of it, which made it really fun. And I kind of miss those days where the two companies could, they didn't have to license. It wasn't like they weren't so precious about it, and they would just kind of have a little bit of fun with it and kind of just be silly with some of those things sometimes. But yeah, so that is the comic breakdown.
Did you read What If?
I have read some What Ifs. I really like What If. I like the concept of What If. Because it's cool to have these like self-contained alternate universes. What if something had gone differently kind of things. I like that plays well with my brain. And so I do like it. I have picked up a few issues here and there. Have you read any?
I read some when I was younger, and liked the basic kind of silly premise of like, what if Howard the Duck was blah blah blah, right? And it's just a different spin on characters. I didn't realize that was basically early multiversal stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, obviously this has to occur somewhere, but it never occurred in my 13-year-old brain that it was a different reality or different universe, different multiverse, I should say, not reality.
Yeah. And I think that's something that like I kind of get the feeling that some of the multiversal stuff is a little bit like after the fact. I get the feeling like they realized that they were really good at making these what ifs, or they had some fun with these. And somewhere along the line somebody was like, "Oh, you know what? Actually, this would be fun as like an actual plot point within the comics. Like this has been a fun little pocket that we can explore, and then but let's see what happens if we actually do some multiversal stuff and build it into the comics."
Yeah, for sure. I think they kind of stumbled into it. I don't think when they started early What If that they had this viewpoint, but to your point, like, it was the jumping off point for the multiverse that we see in the comics and in the movies.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's get in just before we get started with the actual breakdown here. As always, we always like to kind of talk about what our first viewing was like, what we were feeling going into this release. So David, I guess, do you remember anything kind of from first time around when this was first coming out? Were you a watch every week kind of guy? Were you excited? What were you thinking kind of back then?
I mean, it's pandemic times. Watch anything that's coming out, right? I wasn't, What If, I read What If comics when I was younger. I was looking forward to an animated series, and but I didn't have high expectations like I did for the other stuff that came out that year. I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, I'm watching the background. Not watching the background, I'll go watch it, but it wasn't like this, okay, let me log in at this time and just start like, binging it as quickly as I can. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely excited. Like I say, I love the What If stuff. I think actually right around this time they may have been releasing What If Hero Clicks, but no, that was well before that. But anyway, I loved this, and so I was really excited to get into it. I was definitely a watch it every week. I watched it on its release each week. I think they were doing the midnight releases with this one, which I did not I wasn't watching it midnight. I was watching it like after work the next day or whatever.
Oh, Ryan, you're a fraud. No, I'm
I
kidding.
know. Tell me about it. But I was excited, and I knew zombies was going to be a part of it, and I have read and like the original zombies comics, and so I was kind of excited to get to that episode. There is one of the episode the 10th, the infamous 10th episode that got bumped to season 2 is actually was one that I was sad got bumped because it's one that I actually like a lot. But yeah, so I was pretty excited for this. I wasn't holding watch parties or anything, but then again, who was in 2021? Um but I was definitely like ready to go with this one. I was excited, and I was excited to watch it. And
Do you
similarly
think? Yeah,
excited to see. Oh, what were you gonna say?
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say pretty similarly kind of excited to see that they were embracing animation with the MCU. I think this is something we've talked about a few times in various venues on this show, is that like animation is this really cool frontier where it's cheaper. You mentioned it in your production notes that these cost half as much as an episode of Loki. And they could even make it cheaper than that if they wanted to. Um and it allows them kind of some freedom to explore some stories that don't make sense to spend the big budget on. And so I was excited that animation was a new venue and a new medium for the MCU to explore.
Which is funny because animation's only been around for like 100 years, right?
Sure.
Yeah, at least 100 years. Yeah, no, I think I like you. Yeah, I wasn't holding watch parties or staying up to midnight to watch it. I did want to and I am like you were saying, excited that they're now embracing this medium because this felt like a comic book when you're watching it, and I thought it was really cool.
For sure. Well, coming back to it this month, so we're back around to it here. Was there anything particular about coming back to it this month that you were excited about or you were nervous about or anything?
Wasn't nervous. When you watch some movies, you're like, oh God, I hope this is not, completely misogynist or terrible when you rewatch it because you remember it fondly
Sure.
from years ago. It's only been a few years and I've not seen it since. I'd obviously seen the follow-up seasons and I might actually binge those. I was looking forward to, again, revisiting what is effectively the multiverse with a fresh set of eyes, having forgotten most of these episodes. Once you start watching them, all like, oh yeah, I remember this beat or I remember this part, if you will. But I mostly wanted to like binge watch it this time, and think it it was more enjoyable with a binge watch as opposed to, weekly week because it's nice to kind of back them up, especially since you have this arc that occurs towards the second half, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. I am on record in a few places of being kind of the release pattern is part of the art, but I think here it was maybe the release pattern not so much. It was a little bit more of just like it was what it was. And so
And they want to
I
drive people
agree.
to the streaming service, right? And so that's why they're
Right.
like getting people like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to get them past that first month where it's free. But but
it's
yeah,
true.
I thought it was, definitely I agree. Watching it binged was a little bit more interesting or different for sure. Um I was excited to get back to these. Similarly, I remembered most of the like premises. I remembered like, okay, there was the one where we got Captain Carter. There's the one where Iron Man was saved by Killmonger. Yada yada yada. I kind of remembered those parts, but I didn't remember the deeper. the actual storylines necessarily. And so definitely excited to get back in on that and see those again and see some of that and some of these things that do, not to take away from our super secret spoiler show too much, but they do impact the rest of the MCU, which I found interesting when it actually happened, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But there are a few things from this that carry on, and it was interesting to see those again and be reminded of just how simple the premise was originally. And I was also happy. I will say I was looking forward to kind of a brain off type of something to watch. It was not, this was not Black Widow where we're having to deal with the heaviness of Black Widow or anything like that. This was just sit, watch, and enjoy, which I was definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, there's a little melancholy in the middle, but we'll talk about it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. But with that being said, David, should we take a real quick break here?
For all of our sponsors, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see you after the break.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, listeners, welcome back. We are going to get started here with What If Season 1. And David, I'm going to let you take the first couple of episodes here. So why don't you get us started with Episode 1 of Season 1?
Episode 1, Season 1 of What If. Episode 1 is called What If Captain Carter Were the First Avenger, directed by Brian Andrews, who directed all the series, written by A.C. Bradley. I like to call this one What If Ike Perlmutter died in 2012 and they made this as an actual movie? Anyway, so the show features repeating voices. So Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, Stanley Tucci as Dr. Erskine, Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark. Neil McDonough comes back as Dum Dum Dugan, Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, Toby Jones as Aram Zola, Samuel L. Jackson, not that other dude, as Nick Fury, and then Jeremy Renner is returning as Clint Barton. So, fun episode. This is where we see in an alternate universe where Hydra sabotages the super soldier experiment, and Steve Rogers never becomes Captain America. Instead, Peggy takes the serum, she hops in the Hydro chamber, or whatever they call it, transforms into a super soldier. And then, but rather than like him, where he was like paraded around as a mascot on the USO tour, they make a joke of it during the show. She pushes against the sexism of her era while Steve dons Howard Stark's Tesseract-powered Hydra Stomper armor. And together they fight Hydra, and Red Skull summons an interdimensional tentacle monster. Peggy then sacrifices herself by diving into the pork, only to resurface decades later in a 2012 S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. Sounds very familiar. I loved Captain Carter. I thought, rewatching the season, I thought she was the star of it. She was a badass in this episode. The scene where she basically flips the car and fights the Nazis is so good. And you're just like, oh yeah, there should be way more battle animation. That's way easier to do than like green screens and dots on people's heads and stuff. And then I like the Steve when he climbs into the Hydra Buster has like shades of the Mark I, right? Like that kind of feeling. Mm-hmm. And then there were some other things in here that I thought were interesting, but just, seeing Peggy save Bucky in the 107th, I thought was just like a fun nod. They kind of retold it. A couple of the real quick things to note. Brian Andrews wanted to have the Rocketeer appear alongside Captain Carter. And but Feige disapproved of it due to copyright issues. And then, so Steve becoming the Hydra Stomper is basically a leftover from the idea. And then, the other thing I like the one point in time, like, which they have like kind of side by side, and you're like, and I was like, man, I love both those shields. Anyway, so what do you think?
Yeah, I like this one. I will say this was absolutely, I feel like, an intro episode, right? This was literally, let's take Steve's story and replace the character in it. The dance joke was still there. The Bucky, darn near just turning to the camera and winking after he says, "You almost tore off my arm."
Yeah, totally.
So it was good. I do like this, and I like Captain Carter as a character. She's one of the real standouts from this whole series, and she, not to spoil too much, but she comes back a few times in the MCU, and definitely glad to see her get to come back. And she's ended up in the comics as well, and some of those things where, like, this was clearly a star of a character they created here, and so definitely love to see that. And I liked this episode. The Hydra Stomper was fun, obviously, a different Stark making armor and all of that, but I thought this was a fun one. It definitely was a more basic premise where it wasn't like it was a radically different world, which we'll kind of see in the next episode we talk about. Instead, this was just like, take out a puzzle piece, put in a piece of the same shape from a different puzzle kind of thing.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, but I really enjoyed it. Very simple plotline, like you said, and really like helps establish this very important character that we'll see elsewhere in the MCU. Next up is episode 2. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord? This was written by Matthew Chauncey, and a really impressive list of returning actors. I'm really surprised all these people came back, but we have Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, aka Cha-Cha, which was an improvised line, which they kept. Kieran Gillen as Nebula. Michael Rooker as Yondu. I'm always down for some Michael Rooker. I didn't remember if he was voicing it or not. I was like, oh please, let this not be someone imitating Michael Rooker. Give this man his opportunity. Digimon Honsu as Korath. John Kani as T'Chaka. His son Atandwa Kani plays young T'Chaka. Josh Brolin as Thanos, Benicio del Toro as the Collector. Got to nice seeing him kind of like ham it up, and actually
he could have fooled me. I was like, that's a horrible like imitation of Benicio.
We should in the Secret Side do a ranking of like the worst voiceovers of the actors themselves. Sean Gunn as Kraglin, Denai Gura as Okoye, and Seth Green appearing as Howard the Duck, and we will see him again. And then Kurt Russell come back as Ego. So in this story, this what if basically explores Yondu's Ravagers picking up the wrong kid from Earth. 2 eye holes, 2 ear holes, 1 eat hole. Like, they're just like, this is not the same kid.
A whole lot of interstellar radiation or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of nabbing Peter Quill, a young T'Challa who is eager to like explore gets whisked into space, and with his natural charisma and his Wakanda values, he becomes a very different kind of Star-Lord, a legendary outlaw who inspires hope rather than mischief. And so he reforms the Ravagers into like a Robin Hood style crew, and they're all very kind of principled, and they talk down enemies with diplomacy. He even convinces Thanos himself to give up his genocidal plan. It's like,
that seems like genocide.
That seems like genocide. No, it's efficient. But back on Earth, Wakanda mourns a prince who never returns home. Spoiler alert, he does eventually. But this was a very just a couple real quick comments. At the very end of the episode, they do a memoriam for Chadwick Boseman. This is this season of What If was the last thing he did a voiceover to, and it was very like, when I saw that and was reminded, very kind of like saddening, obviously. I will say that there was a missed opportunity for some Redbone in the middle. That's my one big critique of the episode. It's like a missed opportunity. The Jeffrey Wright said this was one of his favorite episodes to narrate due to the strength of Chadwick Boseman's performance and how special it was to be something with him. And Boseman said he really enjoyed playing this more jokey version of T'Challa. And the creative team, they actually toyed with the idea of having a spin-off show starring Star-Lord T'Challa. You know, obviously, sadly, they would never make it.
Yeah,
that would have been very cool. But like, it's a fun, different story. I'd be completely down for that. And if you think about something like Guardians, that's easier to do animation, if we're being honest, than live action.
Oh, so. Yeah. And I picked up this one. This one definitely had more like Easter eggy stuff that wasn't just, here's a reference to the story beat of the thing that we kind of changed. Instead, this was like, these were actual, I felt like, true Easter eggs. So at one point, Yondu's talking about what he's going to do with the orb that we know has the Power Stone in it, right? And T'Challa says, hey, why don't we go restart the Kalurian star, restart the Kalurian star with this? And it feels very likely to me that this was actually a super duper deep cut Marvel reference to the comics. ROM is the title, so the ROM comics, where the Kalurians are a humanoid cat species, which feels very in line with like kind of a feline focused T'Challa, that he would feel a special place in his heart for like a feline humanoid species. So kind of fun there. Obviously, like reusing a species name is an obvious reference, but I don't think it was necessarily just picked out of a hat at random. I think that they chose like something feline for that reason. I also noticed that T'Challa's ship, instead of being the Milano, is the Mandela, which at the time that T'Challa was kidnapped in like 88, Nelson Mandela would have been a political prisoner during that time, and obviously somebody who T'Challa likely looked up to and paid a lot of attention to, given that he was on the African continent during that time.
Also slightly more culturally relevant than Alyssa Milano, no offense.
Yeah, for sure.
But you spotted some stuff in the collector's space.
Yeah. When the collector's on screen, you know there's going to be something there, right? You know that there's going to be, we're going to get something. So in the collector's garage, we got the Commodore, which is the Grandmaster's pleasure craft, and several other Grandmaster ships, including one that Taika Waititi has since in like interviews said was a joke to even include. That's just a big green box that he just included to be funny. That still got included here. We saw Hank Pym's quantum vehicle in the garage as well. So I guess the collector has been to Earth, maybe? We saw a Nova Star Blaster, we saw a Quinjet, and we saw a Necrocraft, which the Sicarian soldiers use in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And then the collector also has, in kind of the big, huge fight, the collector has a set of weapons that you see. And he's using, quote, a arm that he got from a chatty, I forget the species, but he got Korg's arm, right? He's using Korg's disembodied arm for the beginning of the fight. And you see on the kind of set behind him, he has Captain America's shield, he has Mjolnir, he has Malekith's dagger, which he uses, and then he also has Hela's crown, which he uses as well.
I thought Hela's crown was pretty cool. A question: how did he lift Mjolnir?
I guess he's worthy. Well, and this does get into one of those things that the What If comics run into, and these run into too. Is, and this is cheap, right? And I want to name that for listeners out there who are like, God, that's a cheap explanation, but it is. But part of What If stories is a lot of times there's things that just have to happen for the plot. And sometimes that includes things like, oh, the rules around Mjolnir were different this time, right?
Yep, that's
And
exactly what I was going to say. It's just you don't have to be worthy to lift Mjolnir, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to be named something with a C or something, whatever. It's, and sometimes they make a joke of that in the comics. They like make a big joke out of like a rule change that they make, but in general, yeah, it's just like, and we actually see this later on, right? Like it's kind of a MacGuffin with the Infinity Stones later on, that like Infinity Stones are different in every timeline, and so something that could destroy them in one timeline can't destroy them here. Sort of same thing. And I will say that dedication it caught me off guard. I forgot about being his, like, Chadwick Boseman's last project, and so seeing that like in loving memory, I was like, oof.
Yeah.
Back to the gut.
Yep.
So let's move on to episode 3. Episode 3, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? Written by A.C. Bradley and Matthew Chauncey. Actors, we got Michael Douglas coming back as Hank Pym, Clark Gregg coming back as Coulson, Frank Grillo coming back as Rumlow. We already talked about Jeremy Renner, and he'll continue throughout this being Hawkeye. We've got Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, which was kind of funny because they actually changed some of the scenes from The Incredible Hulk, which would have been Ed Norton Banner. They retconned that to Bruce, to Mark Ruffalo's likeness. You also got Loki and Sif, both played by their film actors, Tom Hiddleston and Jamie Alexander, respectively. So in this universe, Fury's dream never assembles. As Nick Fury recruits Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Hawkeye, each Avenger candidate is mysteriously killed before the team can form. These deaths seem unrelated until Fury uncovers the truth. Hank Pym, broken by grief over the loss of his daughter, has turned his brilliance to vengeance, using his shrinking tech to assassinate the heroes. He dismantles the Avengers initiative before it even begins, and Fury turns to an unexpected hope, Captain Marvel. That beeper comes back like a million times in this series, which to some degree I feel like that's the writer's room going, yeah, we know we introduced this really stupid plot device in Captain Marvel, and like Fury totally should have called Captain Marvel a million times throughout this series, and he never did. We get it.
Chekhov's pager.
Right.
It finishes with like, basically he's down like Steve Rogers, Captain America, who's not yet revived, and Captain Marvel, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I like this one. It was cool to see Fury's big week kind of get like brought into more mainline than it had, right? Like there's been a lot of everybody knows that like Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, and Thor all take place in a 7-day period. That's something that has kind of become part of MCU lore. But like it was cool to see it like kind of play out here in that way. Like I mentioned, obviously the Norton, completely retconning Norton out of the Bruce Banner role was pretty funny to me. I saw that as pretty funny, and oh man, the Hulk's death was brutal. Probably the most brutal out of all of the deaths that the Yellow Jacket caused.
Oh yeah, without question. Like that was actually kind of gross, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I guess, what were your thoughts on it? And then I'll get to some of my like Easter eggy things.
I thought it was a fun premise. I thought that again, it completely eviscerates Fury's hope of having this team, instead of being down to like two heroes at the end. I actually had completely forgotten the episode, and only about halfway through I was reminded, oh, it's Yellow Jacket that's doing all this stuff, and it was a fun watch. I thought that the episode itself was not necessarily my favorite episode, but still enjoyable. I would also note that, and I forgot to mention it, these all take place on different Earths. It goes without saying. This is Earth 51825. And it's kind of interesting later on when you see the Watcher pick people from different Earths to like be the new Avengers. So, but I know you spotted a few things in this one.
Yeah, so one thing was the weird scene after Thor dies where he smells like lavender. That got me. It's so funny. So silly. But Easter eggy type of stuff. So one of the things that's discussed is basically when it's all coming together and we're realizing it's Hank Pym and we're finding out why Hank Pym became the Yellow Jacket, which he did in the comics, right? He was a villain. But we're finding out why in this universe he became Yellow Jacket. And it's, because Hope died during a SHIELD mission in Odessa, Ukraine. And that rung a bell for me. I was like, Odessa, Ukraine, where have we heard about that before? I know we've heard about this mission before. It's likely that this is the same mission that in Captain America Winter Soldier, Black Widow explains that this is why she can't wear bikinis, because she was on a mission escorting a nuclear physicist, and I think it was the Winter Soldier, so Bucky, shot through her to shoot the nuclear scientist in Odessa, Ukraine. So in thinking about this, it would strike me as very likely that Hope was assigned to that same mission, and instead of getting shot through at the pelvis, got shot through somewhere that was more fatal. And so I think that's, that's like a little blink and you'll miss it type of Easter egg, but I thought it was really interesting. And then the other blink and you'll miss it type of Easter egg is after Loki. So Loki comes to Earth and becomes ruler of Earth, and he's giving the same speech he gave in Germany in the Avengers. But one of the scenes is showing him this being broadcast like in Times Square, and one of the advertisements is for Pingo Doce. So you know me, I'll spot a Pingo Doce anywhere I can. So love that. So then moving on to episode 4, what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? Written by A.C. Bradley. We got some good returning cast again here. We got Benedict Cumberbatch. We got Rachel McAdams. We got Benedict Wong as Wongers, although we don't know him as that quite yet. Which actually, funny thing, I have taught Ted that now, and he has this like ABC's of Marvel book. And Wong is on he's on the Doctor Strange page, and I'll ask him who each character is. And when I get to Wong, I'm like, who's that? And he goes, Wongers. That's pretty adorable.
That's funny.
We also got Tilda Swinton coming back as the totally not problematically casted Ancient One, and Leslie Bibb doing a nice little spread on this episode as Christine Everhart.
I like to call this episode what if you really love the sound of Benedict Cumberbatch's voice?
Dude, this is the darkest episode known to man. This is so heavy. Like, I'm glad that this was surrounded by I guess it wasn't surrounded, right? Because the Avengers one was also pretty dark. But I mean, we bounce back pretty well with zombies here in a second. But oh my goodness, this is so dark. It's so
Yeah.
heavy.
It's probably, if I'm spoiler, this is probably going to be my least favorite episode of all of them.
That's fair. It's dark and it's heady, but plot real quick. It's not so car accident happens in this universe that just like we know in the mainline MCU, but instead of his hands, it's his heart. In this world, Doctor Strange and Christine Palmer they're still partners, so they're not broken up like they are in the 616. And essentially, no matter what Strange tries, he finds that Christine Palmer dies in the car accident. He discovers that Christine's death is an absolute point in time, a fixed moment that cannot be changed. He is obsessed. He absorbs countless mystical beings, including probably some Mephistos, twisting himself into a monstrous version of Doctor Strange. Ultimately, his reality collapses under his power, leaving him trapped in a void of his own making, begging for forgiveness with no one left to hear him. So yeah, this one is really dark. You basically just have this constant montage barrage of him trying to save Christine and not being able to. This episode is also really, really heady, and I'm gonna get into just a quick little couple of things that I think are actually important from this episode. So, because it teaches us some rules of the multiverse. So, absolute points are a really important thing within the Marvel universe. So they call them absolute points here. Over in the Spider-Verse movies, they also call these canon events. These are basically things that have to happen within the timeline of a given character, right? So, Uncle Ben dying for Spider-Man, or his counterparts always have something similar to that. Or here it's Christine Palmer's death. And so those are things that absolutely must happen for every version of that character and have to keep happening. Now, where this does differ a little bit is, right, Christine Palmer does not die in 616 Earth. It's more the car crash that's the absolute point, I guess, there, but so it's a little bit different than a canon event, but yeah. And then the other thing, and I'm gonna really try and avoid getting too in the weeds here, but I'm gonna just quickly explain something here because there are multiple different things that they use. Like Marvel has used these words kind of interchangeably a few times, which are timelines and universes and realms and yada yada yada. And the rules of time travel and the way that it impacts things is weird. And some things are powerful enough to get you so that you can create a whole new reality based on a choice you make. And that is what a lot of this show is based around.
What Loki's based around, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Loki's based around creating new timelines within the same universe, which, yeah, this is where it gets so weird because it gets, yeah.
It's funny on your point about how it's being referred to as different things. AC Bradley considers this her very best episode in the season 1, but she regrets referring to Christine Palmer's death as an absolute point, knowing that we just saw Loki and they used the term Nexus event, and to have that continuity, they should have used the term. But same thing, this thing that this event that has to happen for things to occur, and there's no way to kind of deviate from it.
Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting here is the time stone, which is what this Strange uses to go back in time and try and save Christine. It has the ability, because it's from that timeline, to take him back into other parts of that timeline and do different things, but it does not have the ability to create a new reality. It doesn't have the ability to fully rewrite reality. And so that's why it can't, on its own, it can't overcome an absolute point either. So yeah, this is heady. You spoiled it a little bit. I think this one I would have, other than the fact that this gave us Strange Supreme, which is a pretty important thing that will also come back in other Marvel projects. I would have happily subbed this out for Sakaran Iron Man.
Question for you. How old does Teddy have to be before you show him this episode?
Yeah. That was actually the funny thing with this, because like we were trying to make time to watch this, and I was like, the first couple episodes we can watch with Teddy. Once you get on to this one or zombies, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. This one scared me, and I'm a grown ass man.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of zombies, why don't we move on to unless did you have any other Easter eggs or anything that you found in that one?
No, you hit upon them. I mean, the kind of the main things that, and this obviously very much cements the concept of this kind of the multiverse. And once you got to this one, it really hits me over the head. I was like, oh, okay, this is where we are going, and just want to have like a open mind to it, and so I keep thinking about Loki, which I love so much. But yeah, no, this was. It does. The thing I will say is it is impressive how they're able to go from something lighthearted like Star T'Challa to something which is basically like a miniature horror film, if you think about it. And so it's really good writing by Bradley and the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So then let's get on to one of the ones that I was looking forward to revisiting, and it's timely that we're revisiting it because we get the mini series that's based around the kind of universe that was spun here. But Episode 5, What If Zombies? So, written by Matthew Chauncey, actors Paul Bettany, Evangeline Lilly's back, Paul Rudd's back, John Favreau is back, Emily Van Camp's back, David Desmalchian, giving us the Baba Yaga, are all back.
Love the Baba Yaga.
So good. So good. So, quick plot. Quantum investigation gone wrong. Brings a zombie virus out from the quantum realm into the Earth. Earth's mightiest heroes fall one by one. Well, in one case, 5 of them at once, but here we are. They're transformed into flesh-hungry husks with their powers intact. A ragtag band of survivors, including Spider-Man, Hope Van Dyne, Okoye, Bruce Banner, and Happy, struggle to stay alive. Their quest for a cure leads them to Vision, who has kept a zombified Wanda contained at terrible personal cost. The hope of salvation lies in Wakanda. But when we head to Wakanda, we find out there's a zombified Thanos who is ready to snap and probably make more people rather than less because he's hungry. But, here we are.
Yeah, another miniature kind of horror twist at the very end with Wanda. Yeah.
Eating T'Challa, apparently. Yeah.
I did like you noted it too, but I just want to comment. I did like 2 things. One, we get Paul Rudd, but not all of Paul Rudd returning.
Just his head.
Just the head. And then I do, like I said, I'm stepping on your comment, but I do love Happy's blam, blam, blam.
That he continues as a zombie, too.
As a zombie with a repulsor. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. This premise is based on Robert Kirkman's Marvel Zombies. If Robert Kirkman rings a bell, he is also the comic book writer behind Invincible and The Walking Dead. So big shot in the comic book world. And he wrote Marvel Zombies. I will talk more about Marvel Zombies, the comic books, in the Monthly Bugle this month, because we have, and usually I reserve this sort of thing for the Secret Spoiler Show, but I think this is fine. There's a mini series of Marvel Zombies cartoons coming out later this month. So I will talk more about the Marvel Zombies comics over in the Monthly Bugle, so go check that out. A couple other interesting little Easter egg, detail kind of things that I will kind of call out. Spidey's suit actually, so Spider-Man's suit in this episode does not resemble his movie suit. Instead, it resembles the suit that Disney uses in his appearances in the parks, which probably, if we had to guess, is because of our favorite character licensing agreements. I would guess Sony maybe owns the rights to that specific suit's appearance, and Disney didn't want to pay for those rights for this project or something. I will also say a couple of like storyline pieces here. I loved the Zombie Land intro, like video that Spidey made. That's feels very Zombie Land with its rules and kind of the jokes he cuts about everybody. Everybody's got kind of, when he gives like what everybody's occupations are, there's always one that's kind of silly and has to do with some really niche plot point of theirs.
Yeah, that was fun. I like that part. The little introduction video was great.
Yeah. And then Bucky's story throughout this episode is horrifically tragic. The dude sees Falcon, who at this point he's kind of frenemies with, right? Like in the timeline, this would have been pre-Falcon Winter Soldier. This would have been kind of their relationship in Civil War. He sees him get cut in half by Michonne. I mean, Okoye. And he also like has to kill Cap. But he does get to wield the shield. He gets to
right? There's some light at the end of the tunnel. A little joy at this one. That was fun. I did like that. We talked about sorry, Cap reached the end of the line.
Yeah. And we do get the Hulk versus Wanda, which everybody debates, right? Who's the most powerful character in the MCU, yada yada yada. And oftentimes it's like Hulk or Wanda, who would win. We don't get to see who wins, but we do get to see them fight, and it's kind of the most powerful magic versus the biggest brute. So that was a fun little like, okay, cool, let's play this out kind of moment.
Yeah, super fun. Yeah, I mean I do like a zombie. This is not one for Teddy, but I do like a zombie watch. And there's something fun, not fun's not quite there, but like the hopelessness, if you will, but the glimmer of hope, but then it's sort of unresolved at the very end. And you're just like, oh, you want the next episode to follow up on it. And doesn't follow. We don't pick up quite here. We pick up, but not quite here.
Yeah. Instead, thanks for the sweet dovetail. We pick up with what if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? Written by Matthew Chauncey. We got Michael B. Jordan coming back as Killmonger. Andy Serkis coming back as Claw. Don Cheadle as Rhodey. And again, very similar to what we did for the Hulk. There were a couple scenes that previously had been Terrence Howard's likeness as Rhodey that got replaced with Don Cheadle's likeness.
What if you were not a nightmare on the set of Iron Man 1?
Yeah. Sorry, Terrence Howard. We'll see you never again. Other than in your, wildly popular TV shows that you do, but here we are. So instead of being captured in Afghanistan, Tony Stark is saved by Eric Killmonger. Without the trauma that would make him Iron Man, Tony becomes Killmonger's pawn. Killmonger manipulates Stark, Wakanda, and the U.S. military into waging war, only to seize the power for himself. His intelligence and ambition crown him the ruler of Wakanda, complete with the Black Panther armor and control of advanced technology. Yet his path leaves a trail of betrayal. I did not think of how easy that would be to say when I wrote that. And the Watcher reminds us that victory built on blood rarely lasts. So yeah, not a whole lot here Easter eggy necessarily. I will say one thing is Tony mentions that the drink he's having in the Funvee is a Macallan 26, which goes for the most recent sale of a bottle of Macallan 26 was $2.7 million. So
seems reasonable.
Yeah, just
what a deal.
Exactly.
I did like the little shout out to Oakland. I'm always gonna like.
He's kid from Oakland. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the last we see of T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa in the series, as obviously Killmonger kills Tony and Rhodey and T'Challa to take over Wakanda. Earth 32938 for those keeping score at home. But yeah, there's not, like you said, there's just not a lot of Easter eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, we will see the Star-Lord T'Challa come back in the last episode, but this is the last, like,
T'Challa, yeah.
Earthbound T'Challa, yeah.
Yep.
Moving on to an episode that had a ton of Easter eggs, but they were cameos, and I'm gonna tell you guys I did not know a lot of them. We'll see how many David caught, because they almost, I mean, to call them Easter eggs, they threw them in your face. But what if Thor were an only child? Written by A.C. Bradley, Natalie Portman, Kat Dennings, Jeff Goldblum coming back as our Grandmaster, Colby Smulders, Taika Waititi voiced Korg in this one. So lots of folks coming back on this one. Imagine a universe where Loki was never adopted by Odin. Without his mischievous brother, Thor grows up spoiled and carefree, more of a party god than a god of thunder. When he throws a galaxy-sized bash on Earth, S.H.I.E.L.D. calls Captain Marvel to rein him in. Their clash levels deserts, cities alike until Frigga threatens to arrive and put Thor in his place. After a frantic cleanup effort, Thor narrowly avoids his mother's wrath, but the fun ends when an army of Ultron drones suddenly appears. This was silly. I mean, this was so goofy.
It was very good. Goofy is the perfect way to describe it, right?
Yeah. Sassy giant Loki was great.
Yep. Giant blue frost giant Loki was great. Party Thor was great. Keeps yelling about Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas.
Yes.
Scroll Elvis confirmed, I guess. But I will say one thing, speaking of the Vegas setting, that is interesting is none of the casinos could be accurately recreated, as recreating buildings in animation actually requires a license.
Yeah.
Which, when you're shooting on location, you have to get licenses and that sort of stuff, but it's not like appearance licenses. And so Disney didn't want to get appearance licenses for all the Vegas casinos, so they're kind of recreated in just slightly off ways. Like the Luxor is right next to the Bellagio, which is not the case in our Vegas, right? But yeah,
I do love the idea of them playing with like the names and just changing them slightly. Just
the Luxor,
the Bellagio, circus, or something stupid like that. I also like the reference to Infinity War. You want me to put the hammer down, right?
Right. Yeah. So this one was fun. It was very, 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 very silly. Like it was. I was watching this one last night, and Lisa had been putting Ted to bed, and she comes in as I'm watching this one, and she just rolls her eyes, which I was like, yeah, that's probably the right response to this one. Like, that's what this one is. But it does kick us off into our arc for the last two here.
Yep. And that was, I think on rewatch, that was the thing that really, this kind of, whatever, like Infinity War Ultron character, which is, you think about is like, think of Ultron, which already has like his, AI, he is vibranium, right? Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then a bunch of Infinity Stones. I'm like, cool, this is going to be easy. What that leads us to episode 8. What if Ultron won? Earth 29929, written by Matthew Chauncey. So In this reality, Ultron successfully transfers into Vision's body, so not separate, and claims the Infinity Stones. And so with his, immense power, he basically annihilates the Avengers, he wipes out humanity, and scours the galaxy for life. Even Thanos falls instantly before him, which is this funny scene which is like cuts him in half. But then Ultron becomes aware of the Watcher observing him, and the battle then shifts beyond the universes. Ultron shatters the barriers of the multiverse, forcing the Watcher to seek help from the very people he swore never to interfere with. So a lot of fun little Easter eggs here. I should have said at the beginning, the actors were Jeremy Renner reprises his role as Hawkeye, and obviously we see Benedict Cumberbatch again. I like this episode. The beginning fight sequence with Natasha and Clint, you see like, oh, these are actually like, maybe as compared to Hulk, they're pretty weak, but as individuals, they are like completely like tearing things up. I saw an article which listed Clint's kill count in this episode as 140, including Zola. So I like the ever see Raiders comment. That was funny. There's Easter egg to the Russian super soldier program, which is obviously the Red Guardian. And obviously the big thing this time was like, it's Clint that makes the sacrifice this time, as opposed to Infinity War. I had a question, which I think I know the answer to, but the end where we see like the planet being eaten, I thought that was Galactus, but I don't think it was. I couldn't find anything which kind of confirmed that or not. You know the scene I'm talking about? Like where the Watcher and Ultron are fighting. At one point in time, there's look for it again. I'll try to find the timestamp, but like it looks like Galactus. And I looked at it a couple times, looked at the mask, because they both, Galactus and Ultron, have the weird kind of like side ear thing, kind of, you know what I mean? Like on the side of the head.
Yeah.
I think it was probably Ultron, but it looked like Galactus. I'm going to say it was Galactus.
That's fair.
Come at me, Marvel.
Yeah, probably like Galactus, kind of Galactus esque, maybe Galactus inspired, because I think it is supposed to be Ultron. It's supposed to be like, that's what I'm looking at it now. I see some pictures, and I think the idea is like, this Ultron is so powerful he can do this, but also that is definitely invoking Galactus, kind of just in theme or in the way he looks. Yep.
So I thought maybe it was an artistic nod. Maybe they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll like kind of hint at it and get the nerds all like fired up. So that leads us to episode 9, the final one of the series. What if the Watcher broke his oath? Again, written by A.C. Bradley. The only new reappearing character is Georges St. Pierre as Batroc the Leaper, makes an appearance, but otherwise it's the cast of characters we've seen before. So in this one, the Watcher is faced with Ultron's multiversal conquest. He breaks his sacred vow. He assembles the new team, the Guardians of the Multiverse, and it consists of Captain Carter from episode 1 from Earth 82111, T'Challa Star-Lord from episode 2 from Earth 21818, the Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme from episode 4 from Earth 91233, Killmonger Black Panther from episode 6 from Earth 32938, and then Thor episode 7 from Earth 72124, and Gamora from season 2 episode 2 that we did not get this time. It was written in spring 2019 and it was pushed back, but the pandemic had started and they just kind of left it in there as just, it is what it is. People can kind of figure it out. So together they wage an epic battle across realities to stop Ultron, and betrayal and sacrifice mark their path. But ultimately, Ultron is contained within a pocket dimension, watched over by Killmonger and armed Zola, and are locked in a single battle struggle. The multiverse survives, but the Watcher knows it'll never be the same. And so at the very end, there's Ultron and Killmonger fighting over the stones back and forth, and then they're in this little pocket dimension, and they're being watched over by the Sorcerer Supreme. A couple fun things in this one. The the appearance of Gamora reminds me of Infinity War. It was like, who is Gamora? Where is Gamora? Why is Gamora? And I was like, wait, why is Gamora here? The rainfall of zombies was frightening. That scared me. I'm down for the zombie Wanda versus Ultron fight. Like, and as an aside, would also be down with this if this were like the new Avengers, the asterisk new Avengers. So
yeah,
fun episode.
This would have been a fun spin-off, is like to get the Guardians of the Multiverse, their own little spin-off show. That would have been fun.
Oh, that'd be great, right? That would be super duper fun. But yeah, it was just like fun little things. You see like Gamora fighting with Thanos' blade and like the dueling shields with Peggy and Natasha. It was a very cool, fun episode. You know,
yeah.
Thought the season ended on like a real high note.
Absolutely. Yeah. It ended on, and this is something that the comics do, the What If comics do, is they do leave you wanting more, right? They almost always don't tell the whole story, and they can't, right? Like the whole idea is the story begins, middles, and ends, but you know, there's a universe that continues after that. And you know, I thought they did that really well with these, where like it wasn't done right, and it felt done enough to where it was satisfying, but open enough to where you know there's a universe past that.
Yeah. No, it was you know, one of my favorite episodes from the season. You know, you see this. And one of the nice things is, especially in like something like this, they write themselves in the corner. What could defeat Ultron? You know,
right.
Infinity Stone empowered Ultron, and they wrote something, and whether it makes sense from a physics perspective or like whatever, this is it. This is how it ended up. So,
yeah. Well, let's get into our closing thoughts here, David. So, main takeaway: why was this show important? You know, overall, why was it significant? I would say, you know, I touched on it briefly in the beginning. I will say my part first here is just, you know, they breached into comedy or into animation. And they started doing some animation stuff, which is cool.
Yeah. I'd say that. I'd say Captain Carter. And then obviously the relation to like some of the stuff we're going to see in like Multiverse of Madness and so forth. So this is a nice little like kind of pin for that going forward. But I would agree with you. Yeah, it's the exploration of just a completely different, mostly non-linear story that doesn't really interconnect, that you don't have to, like, it could almost be its own spotlight, if you will, right? Where you just kind of watch it on its own and enjoy it for what it is. Obviously, if you've seen other things, you will appreciate aspects of it more. Like you're going to certainly like the first episode if you've seen Captain America, you know? But yeah, I thought I would agree with that as probably the main significance.
For sure.
So for you, who is your, even though we have a bunch of different characters and a bunch of different non-related stories, who is your MVP?
Yeah, this is really interesting, right? Because like, do you pick Uatu, right? Or you know, that's the one character that really kind of carries through.
Saving him for later.
Yeah, I think I might save him for later as well. I think I'm gonna go with a villain maybe, and this might be interesting, but I'm gonna pick Infinity Ultron.
Okay.
I thought Infinity Ultron was really, really interesting, and just like this idea of Ultron who won, and this idea of like the Ultron who could transfer his body or his being into Vision, because that was the whole thing, is like he could become Vision and then he armored up, and it's like it's one of those interesting things where it's like, okay, cool, so these world-ending events are actually world-ending. And it was really neat to get to see that play out. And so, I suspect I know who you're gonna pick, but I'm leaving them on the table for you a little bit. But
I will say
yeah.
this: bummer that we didn't get James Spader. That's a slight miss because
Yes,
Ross Marquand was okay, but like it wasn't. James Spader is just great. He's got such a distinct voice. If I had not picked him, I would have picked Chadwick Boseman / T'Challa / Star-Lord. Like, just because you could tell he was having fun with it. And, it's his last role. But I am going, because I can't pick him, because I picked him before, I am going to go with Captain Carter. Captain Carter was, such a, important from beginning to end. One of the through-point heroes, does a great job. Haley Atwell's great. And I thought that she was great. She was an awesome character.
Yeah. Little bit of an honorable mention to Jiman. I just heard this pronounced like 1,000 times, right?
Jiman Hansun.
You don't pronounce the D. I think it's Jiman. But anyway, I was listening to something else totally unrelated, and he was being discussed by people who like know him, and But regardless, his version of Korath here as like the fanboy silly, like totally different than the Korath we saw. Otherwise, honorable mention for just how fantastic that was.
Okay, if we're going for completely different, okay, here's just off the cuff that's a great choice for like wildly different portrayal that I really enjoyed. I might have to choose. If I chose that, then you're gonna have to choose someone else from the same episode. I probably would choose Michael Rooker, just because like his character is so much different, and I love Michael Rooker. So I'll pick him at any point in time. So
yeah, there's so much Walking Dead in this series. I'm realizing, like, not just in the zombies episode, but just, I mean, there's a lot of Walking Dead in the MCU, but once you get to this, there's a lot of Walking Dead in the in What If season 1.
I liked it. It was good.
Let's see here. So overall, we talk about this in thirds, right? Top third, middle third, bottom third. And I debated saying like, let's consider animation as its own thing, but there's really only like 4 projects in animation right now. So it's kind of hard to say like within animation where things lie. So I am going to ask you, David, top third, middle third, bottom third, as far as in the multiverse saga, and then also top third, middle third, bottom third, as far as TV goes, TV overall.
Okay, so this is really hard because there are also 3 seasons, right? So we're just picking based on this season, correct?
This season, right?
Okay, so we're not basing on a title, which makes sense. That's consistent with what we talked about with Loki. So I would say, as far as the multiverse goes, so phases 4, 5, 6, I would. This is so tough. I'm just going to chuck it in the middle, and then probably re-rate it at some point in time. And then as far as TV shows, I'm going to say middle again, but maybe upper middle. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think in both rankings, I would put it on the like middle, but depending on how many things get released and how many things are worse than it, could float to the top.
Yeah.
It's kind of right in that, like, if you were to break it down to quarters, right? It's kind of in that second quarter from the top. So it's right in there where like it might be in the middle third one day, it might be in the top third based on other releases another day. And so I think it was really good, right? It's a very good series, or a very good season. And I would say, I guess, gut feeling right now, and I didn't put this in the script, so I apologize that I'm bringing this on you. Actually, no, we'll save that for the spoiler show. We'll save. I was going to ask you seasons, rank the seasons, but we'll save that for the spoiler show.
You mean the What If seasons?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to rewatch them, dude. I've not seen season 2 in a minute, but yeah, we'll do that for the spoiler show. I'll make sure to kind of crank through them as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see like where this one could have one of the largest. After we see everything else and kind of your memory is refreshed, you'd be like, oh, that's actually way better than some of the things. Oh, actually, that's But I think like top-ish of the middle third sounds about right. So, yeah.
Well, listeners, if you want to catch our super secret spoiler show, you can check it out at our Patreon. We are part of the Ears Up podcast network, and we participate in the Patreon for Ears Up. The link is always in the show notes, so go check that out. Other than that, check out our social medias, Puny Pod on your social media of choice. We also do... I participate in the Discord for Ears Up. That link is also in the show notes. You don't have to be on the Patreon. I know a lot of Patreons like sell access to their Discord. But we're not doing that. You can join for the Discord for free and chat with us there. Listen to the other shows on the network. Just about everybody is kind of revitalized. The Buena Vista boys are doing their thing. The Bantha Milk guys are back. Rob has a new co-host over there on Bantha Milk. The Supreme Resort guys are doing Supreme Resort things. I haven't seen anything from Scraping the Vault recently. I think they're prepping to maybe close up shop, do something big for their close up shop or something. I know that they've been kind of struggling with getting that done, but hope to hear from them soon. I was on Ears Up recently, so if the episode The History of Marvel in Theme Parks, I did a full breakdown of Marvel in theme parks, which was really fun and really interesting, so go check that out. And then also I should mention I did just make a couple of appearances on the Hub Crawl. I helped Eric out. I was his guest on an episode, and then the next episode his co-host was still out of town, so I jumped in and subbed in as Eric's co-host on that episode. So go check out the Hub Crawl if you like listening to me talk. So other than that, thank you all for listening. Puny Pod will return with Shang-Chi. Enough said.